I just covered a tune today. It's from this game called Wizardry, which I've played and beaten. And it's a different, I don't know, it's a battle theme. And I'm going to try and play it. I didn't play this version of Wizardry. It's the PC engine, which is like the turbo graphics, which didn't have a ton of games, but like it was like around that Super Nintendo era where right before like PlayStation and like Sega Saturn and stuff, there was just this era called Turbo Graphics and PC Engine in Japan. It just like, I don't know, they had really interesting games. This one's like a remake. Like Wizardry's been around since like the late 70s, early 80s. It's like 1980 or 1979, something like that. It's like D&D came out, and then this company, Surtech, made a game like D&D where you have a group of people and you go through a hallway, go through a dungeon. It's like the old computers that like the mazes and stuff, but this was that game. It was really difficult. And there's like a remake that I played and beat, and it's fun. But this like got really big in Japan. Now, I think part of the reason is there's like character classes. You got your fighter, you got your mage, you got your bishop, you got your thief class, and you got like your alignments. You got your lawful good people, you got your lawful evil people, you got your chaotic people, and something like that. And there was like special classes. They had like, you know, you like rolled up your characters, and then like if you had really high stats, you could make a samurai. They just added a samurai class and a ninja class, and like this was a game that they just thought it'd be cool, and I think maybe that's why it really took off in Japan, because it's like, oh, this is like an American game, and they added like a ninja and a samurai class, and like they were starting to make really strong computers in Japan around that time. And so I think it like eventually, like they made all kinds of versions of this, and like there's like even like an anime of Wizardry. But basically, Wizardry is one of the most important games of all time. For RPGs, it's that game that is the grandfather of role-playing games. We wouldn't have Final Fantasy if it weren't for Wizardry. But there was also another game that was like really big, Ultima, and that also like took off in Japan. But the Wizardry games were it's like they were big in America for a little bit, and then it just disappeared. And then there's still just like tons of Wizardry games. And then the company that originally made it, Surtech, went out of business. And so somebody else bought it, and like they make their own things. But anyway, I like talking about old game history, because like I'm a big fan of D&D. I study games and game design and stuff, and I'm very fascinated with the evolution. Because when I was growing up, we played Star Wars the role-playing game. It was the six-sided dice version of Palladium Games, something like that. And we played it all the time, like our family. We all played. We all made characters. We were obsessed with Star Wars. And then that kind of went into like D&D and stuff. And so like it's just been like a tradition in my house with like my older brothers to like run games and like it's been a bonding experience where we just like, we make characters and play, pretend, and try to create worlds. And I would say a few of my brothers are really good at making role-playing games, making, like, we want it, like, people buy adventures. People bought books that laid out, you're going to fight a goblin here at the town, there's going to be this thing. And those are well-written things. And you can make it however you want. But at least my brother Mitch, he always liked doing homebrew. And I think part of it was we were poor, so we had to make it up. We had to use our imagination. And so he was just a very good storyteller. And these kinds of games they didn't have a whole lot of story. This probably evolved from the late 70s and 80s, where old school role-playing games was very go in a dungeon, get the gold, get the treasure. That's it. Very low fantasy. This isn't about saving the world, this is about getting gold. Okay? We're going to get rich. You didn't have anything to do. All you had to do was just dream about getting rich. It's the American dream. That's what Dungeons and Dragons is. It's living the American dream in a dungeon. We're going to kill beholders and eyeball monsters and slimes and find gold. Because everybody else died in here. We're going to be the ones getting out. That's what role-playing games were. Suddenly it became there's a story. And there was these campaigns. And you didn't just play one game. You kept your character. And you would level up. And you'd grow attached. Wizardry was a game you don't want to get attached to your character. They're probably going to die. Because they're level 1. They only have a couple hit points. Let's just say, if you're a thief, you roll a 4-sided dice. If you roll a 1, you have 1 hit point. So if you take any damage, you're dead. Or you might, nowadays, you start off with 8 hit points plus whatever modifier, and you maybe have 12 hit points, and then you might die, but you need 3 turns before you actually die. And there's ways to resurrect, and there's priests and scrolls. There's all kinds of ways your character can live, so you grow attached. So I think people nowadays kind of care about their characters. You get invested. Probably understand this. You grow attached to your team. If you ever played XCOM, you know how brutal that game is. You got a 90% chance of shooting that alien in the head. But you're probably going to miss because that's XCOM. And you went out of your way to get out of cover and unload a machine gun, and it just didn't work. And then suddenly your character dies because everybody finds your guy right next to the alien that you shot point blank and you still missed. Because that happens. And so you just make another character. Or it's like, oh, I made Rossaroni or Rossrick the untouched or whatever, I don't know. But I made Rossrick the second, Rossrick 2, Rossrick the third. And so that's what people would do early role-playing games. They would make multiple characters because the mortality rate in old school role-playing games was very high. When I played Wizardry, I had Mitch, Colin, Justin, me, and I probably made like 5 variations of Colin and Mitch. I made Colin. I made Colin the Second. I made Black Colin. I made Chinese Colin. I made Chicken Colin. I made all sorts of people. And they had to get through the dungeon. And one of these variations got through the dungeon and won. And so that's meaningful just in the terms of that. But, you know, you play a role-playing game, you probably make one or two characters. Maybe it's a really big deal. You ever heard of Critical Role? Oh, they do a whole acting, and I mean, these are professional voice actors, and they change some of the rules. They make it kind of their own thing, and they're very, you know, into the thing. They have elaborate miniatures and things like that, and they're very invested. It's a big deal. Like, people watch this. People watch this. I can't imagine watching D&D. I can't. I just personally can't do that. It's one of those things. It's been a part of my life the entire time. I can't watch the most famous role-playing groups do anything. Because it's better to play. It's kind of, I don't know, it's that feeling you want to be playing it rather than just watching. Which, maybe there's some things you'd rather watch. You watch people. This is Twitch. People watch people play games. In fact, it might even be two layers of that. You watch a guy watching a guy playing a game. That different level, I don't know. But Wizardry is a brutal, low fantasy RPG. Not much story. There's a wizard named Wordna, which is Andrew spelled backwards. The creator of the game. It was Andrew something, I think. And, you know, you just go down lower and lower, and the lower you are in the dungeon, the stronger the enemies. And there's traps. There's poison needle traps. There's gas traps. There's sleep traps. You get attacked by wandering monsters. You can't see them on the screen. You're going through the halls. This is what wizardry is. And you have spellcasters, and you have thieves. You need thieves to disarm traps. So you have a guy whose whole purpose is to disarm traps. He's probably going to die, though, disarming the trap, but he's the one that dies. Nobody else gets hurt, I think. Or maybe everybody does get hurt, but, you know, you got a better chance with a thief. So you need a thief, even though they're weak. You have 6 people in your party. You have 3 in the front, 3 in the back. Or it might be 2 in the front, 2 in the middle, 2 in the back. It might be like that. I forget. But basically, you got a front line, and then you got a back line of people. And so you have your strong warriors up front. But you might also have a thief up front. Because the thief needs to disarm the trap. If the thief is not in the front, then, you know, it's not going to work. So when you first start, you have nothing. You have 0 equipment. You just have some dudes. You have somebody that can cast 1 spell. It might not even be that good. But that's the game. And once they've casted that spell, you got to go back to town and then buy things or rest and heal. And then you go back in. Or you make a few other guys and then have like shifts, night shift. You have day shift and night shift of people. And then if your guys die in the dungeon, or maybe they're knocked out, you got to go save them. And it's possible to get them in the dungeon. But you have to remember where they are. This is old school. There's like maps and stuff in games now, and waypoints, and they tell you, oh, you're like 10 steps away from this thing, and you just have to talk to this person. That's the waypoint. This game, you could play a version where there's no map. You have to get grid paper and draw each square and map out. You know, these games you would have somebody being the map maker, the cartographer. Or you'd find a bit of the map, like that was super important in this kind of game. It's a different kind of game. It's the most nerdy thing, or it's very interesting. But you'd have somebody bring pizza. You'd have somebody bring snacks. You'd have somebody be the map maker. Maybe you'd have somebody that talks for the party. That's kind of how these things go. So anyway, Wizardry was a very elaborate game for 1979, 1980. It was on the Apple II, very old computer. And the remake does have, it was built off of that, even that engine, and you could play it in that style. There is a much easier version that they put on there where it's there's not permadeath. You have multiple turns before your characters die. You can auto map. You can make it easier. You change some of the levels where it's just a little bit simpler. It's not as convoluted. This is kind of the difference of a game from back then to a game now. This is a big preamble for just playing a track that I just learned today that I'm probably forgetting after I played it, because that's what happens when you learn a song. You instantly forget it. So, big preamble, but I don't know. This is just one of my interests, talking about old role-playing games versus modern. And I don't necessarily think older is simply better, but there's a lot of things in modern role-playing games that I think are good. Like there's the advantage rule set where you roll 2 20-sided dice and you take the higher number, or disadvantage where you roll 2 dice and then take the lower number. That happened only 10 years ago. But then again, people probably had been doing that kind of rule for a long time until Wizards of the Coast was like, oh, you know what, maybe we should add this thing. This is kind of like a fun thing. This gets people engaged, they want to think a little bit. But at the same time, I don't know, there's a ton of role-playing games. I prefer maybe a slightly simpler, where if you think of something, just because it doesn't say it on your character sheet, maybe you're able to try for it. But maybe if you're of a certain profession or a class or a race or something, maybe you have, maybe you might be better than, if an orc's generally strong. But then again, that's also modern role-playing games versus older. Older, they had racial advantages, and they called them races. Orcs, dwarves, elves, they're different looking. They have different characteristics. Elves were usually more dexterous, or they had more magic capability. Dwarves, they were stronger. They could resist against poison. They could figure through stone work or something a little bit better. Elves were trained in swords due to their culture. Orcs, they were trained in axes. They were very strong, but maybe they were stupider or something. I don't know. That's a controversial thing, but at the same time, it's having different kinds of rule sets. I just look at it, these are different kinds of challenges in the games. I like when there's maybe, because you play a game, I've played games where it doesn't feel like the dungeon master wants your characters to die, or rather they're too afraid of challenging your team, and so it's too simple, or maybe they're focusing on they kind of flim-flam. They don't push for action, and part of that is on the players, but at the same time it's okay, why don't you just make us I've had games where it's you basically are so bored to tears, you try to just make something happen, and it's to me that's a lack of skill on the storyteller. the dungeon master. You got to be able to push the action. Nothing happens. There's no stakes. You're not heroic. Maybe if you have a hero that doesn't have good stats, that doesn't mean everything. Like, that makes it even more heroic if you have a hero that is the underdog. In modern D&D, it's almost impossible for them to die. It feels like you could just get 4 fighters. They each go like 8 times before your one boss character that's like trying to kill the party or whatever, and like it is already dead, and it's like, I didn't even get to tell a story. And it's like, I don't know. I've seen that kind of play out, and it's just kind of like, yeah, it's not really interesting. So it's hard to balance difficulty with fun. Because difficulty sometimes isn't fun for people. They want to kind of coast. They don't want to have something too challenging. But at the same time, you have no challenge. There's no growth. It doesn't feel rewarding. So it's a different time. It's like an old feeling of like what dungeon crawling is you're going through hallways, you can't see anything. You have a torch. That torch is going to run out in 15 minutes. Can you get through that hallway to get to the other side? Like, you ever crawl through the sewers and your storm drains and stuff? I've never done that or gone spelunking, but it's like you have a time limit. Your air is going to run out. That's a challenge. Some people are thrilled by that. It scares me. Spelunking scares me. But role-playing games, you're not in any danger at all, but you're placing yourself. You're immersed with a good storyteller. You can be immersed and feel a similar kind of tension. If people play along and are appropriately challenged to their abilities, it's very engaging. So that climb of like you're slowly getting power and you actually feel like you've made some advances. The difference between level 1 and level 2 is like, well, you would have died in 1 hit at level 1 and you killed like 10 monsters. At level 2, if you had a good roll, if you gained a lot of hit points, oh man, you're going to take 2 or 3 hits. That's a big deal. Now suddenly you're like, oh man, I can go way deeper in the dungeon. I don't have to just return home. I don't have to spend money on, reviving my people. And you get armor. And then suddenly you were never hitting the enemy. Now suddenly your weak guy is contributing. And it's like, dang, I got like a spot. I can, got a purpose. It's a big feeling. That's why people like this. That's why people like role-playing games. They like feeling like they've figured out a puzzle and they've, gained some kind of thing that they maybe normally wouldn't have in real life or something. I like a mix of there's combat, there's a sense of exploration, and there's a social component, there's like a story. So you got like the combat thing, you got this exploration. Go to where no man has gone before. I want to feel like I'm doing something new. If I see goblins at a wagon, I've seen that 100 times. I'm not surprised. If you take me to a land that has its own principles, interesting political tension, if there are certain customs, hey, these are the bad guys that took over the old kingdom, but you know what? They came from a portal from a different land, and actually they're environmentalists. So even though I thought, oh, they overthrown my kingdom, well, you know what? Actually, they kind of care about some things. So suddenly I'm speaking with their leader, and I'm kind of suddenly have mixed feelings about, oh, wait, well, I don't know. I have this vendetta against them, but at the same time, they're complex characters. But then I have to do this mission because I got to gain money. I got to, gain social status and get better armor or whatever. And, suddenly you find something, That's something my brother kind of created. He created this world. I could name places from that world. That's meaningful storytelling. Oh, Mike Paladin came from this land called Bratvia, and his name was Gene. He was a paladin, and the Thel came from a different realm, and they were like high elves from like Morrowind or something, like an Elder Scrolls thing. And they took over the old kingdom, and they renamed it. They had, and we had to go slay the arch griffin, but there was an egg, and we had to take this egg, and they prized this thing. They wanted to raise griffins for like their army or something, or maybe they just wanted to preserve griffins because it was like an endangered species. It was like a weird, so there was this conflict. This actually ended terribly because it was one of the players' first adventure, and we were debating whether returning the egg to this new kingdom, because we ran into a group of people who claimed they were from the old Bratvian kingdom. They were like traveling, and they were like, yes, we're surviving in the wilderness, and we'll take the egg. And my character was Bratvian. And so I had this dilemma. Like, we would have gotten paid, but it ended up one of the characters convinced the new player to just smash the egg because we were talking about what to do with the egg, and it was taking too long. And then my brother was like, are you actually wanting to do that? And then the character did that anyway. And he's like, all right, well, they're like, oh, well, you guys aren't getting paid. All right, good. And it was so upsetting. It was so upsetting because I was invested, and we were having a spirited discussion. But it became a thing, the egg problem. This was like a trope. Like you read movie tropes of, oh, well, this thing or whatever. It's like the egg problem became like a recurring conversation with me and my brother. We would have postmortems of our Dungeons and Dragons sessions. We'd just talk about it. What we could have done better. What made the story interesting? What worked? What had the players interested in? It was kind of because he cared. He created characters. He gave them names. He gave them lines to say. They had quests. They had rewards. There's a lot of preparation to get people together. It's like a band. You got to have the songs for people to play. People got to rehearse, and so these things are kind of crafted to make it somewhat believable and have a continuity. And he had very good continuity, and he could make adventures that had combat, that had exploration, that had a social component, and they were all interesting. And it's funny because we later, I don't know, everything led into another thing. And some of this probably was improvised, and a lot of it might have been improvised, but I think like thinking fast on your feet and kind of the, you know, the storytelling. This is a tradition. This is a skill. This is like an interesting skill to tell stories, and to make it compelling. I've seen a lot of people try to run Dungeons and Dragons. It's very boring because I think you got to run it like it's the last time you're ever going to see these people together. You got to have a band practice like it's the last time your band is ever going to play together, because that's how easily it can go away. It's really hard to get a good group. It's really hard to get a group of friends to stick around, to take hours out of a day. Maybe they're one day off and they hate their job, and if you bore them to tears, then it's not worth it. If you give them something generic that they've already seen before, or something they can't invest in, then it's not worth it. But there's a lot of reasons why groups fail, but could be nothing at all. Could just be a life-changing event. But I think you gotta like have a beginning, middle, and end. You gotta make it quick. You don't want to. You gotta respect everyone's time, and you gotta like make them feel like they're getting somewhere. And that I've had games where it's like it was 4 hours of nothing, one person just talking the whole time, playing two different characters, not letting anybody else talk or understand what was going on. And then all my character did was open up a door, and then like that was it. Like there was nothing that happened. It was terrible. It was the worst 4 hours I've ever had in my life. But I've had a game that was only like 2 hours, had somebody that never knew what role-playing was. He didn't even watch Lord of the Rings. He didn't even watch Star Wars, nothing. He was just like, well, you know, we would sometimes practice teaching English or something. It was like something for his company, or like maybe teaching or something. That was the only time he had like a collaborative playing pretend. He was kind of a serious guy, but we had more fun with that guy who was kind of like, I don't know, he just kind of played with the idea, and he's like, oh yeah, oh, I'll do this. And he didn't understand any of the rules, but he asked questions. And my brother was really good at like explaining it to him concisely, and just like asking him to do a thing, and then just like explaining, oh, you rolled really high here. Oh, you rolled kind of middling. Maybe you had this kind of result, you know. And it was kind of just, oh, that's how you do it. He wasn't shy about it. There's people, they don't know how to like ask a question, or they don't want to do anything. They're like, or they're like weirdly attached to their character in a way where it's like they don't play anything. Oh, I'm just gonna dig a hole and just like not do anything. It's like, no, that's not Dungeons and Dragons. You gotta be curious. You gotta be heroic. You gotta be deceptive. You gotta do something. You gotta make yourself useful, you know. And that makes it like, oh, this person wasn't just like a wallpaper in the background, you know, just not even supporting anything, just being a body, you know. It's like, that's not fun. If everybody has fun, I think that's like successful, you know. And it had very short, you know, oh, we defended the town, we killed a vampire, we got a magic sword, and you know, your character leveled up, and it's like, oh wow, this was really fun. I want to play again because I got a magic sword, I defended a village, I learned this history about this vampire, and I got this scroll to kill the vampire. And you know, it was just kind of like, oh wow, that was like something I hadn't really seen before, or somebody that never played before got invested in like a murder mystery thing. He's like, oh yeah, I get that. Yeah, it's kind of like a whodunit thing. It's like, oh, you got it, you get it. That's kind of the key there. Okay.